like? C is done. All right? So what I'd like for you to do is, on a piece of paper, I want you to draw 5 circles. 5 circles.
Thank you.
I have markers. I have paper for anyone who needs them. Anybody need paper, markers? Yes, sir. Okay, great. Anybody else need paper? All right, so 5 circles. Large enough to put information inside of. I know, he's like, oh, now you tell us. All right? So large enough to put information inside of. What I want you to do is I want you to put one thing that you value in each one of those circles. One thing that you value in each one of those circles. It could be a concept like freedom. It could be a person. It could be a relationship. It could be a thing like a car or a cabin. One thing that you value in each one of those circles.
The same thing in each circle?
Nope, 5 different things. Yep, thank you for the clarification. 5 different things. Do a little bit of management by walking around. I know that 5th one can be tricky, but cut yourself some slack. All right, it looks like most people have 4, if not all 5. What I'd like you to do now is we're going to play a game, and the game is very simple. What I'd like for you to do is to find 2 people for each one of your circles. Once you've found those individuals, have them put their initials inside the circle. Only one person can sign your paper, but you need 2 different people. So I can only sign a person's paper once, but I can sign many people's paper, but I can only sign on there once. So you need 2 people per circle, but only one person can sign on your paper. Does that make sense?
No.
Yes.
Okay.
And they have to share the same value?
So I want you to find an individual who you either agree with or share the same value. They are to sign on that one value, and then they move on to another person. Does that make sense?
Now you got to sign.
All right. So I'll give you about 2 minutes for this. On your mark, get set, go. So was anyone able to get 10 people? Were you able to get all 10? No. All right. Anyone get 8? 8 people? Oh, sweet. 8. You got 9. All right, great. Let's give them a hand. Get 9. It's the Great Hustle Award. The Great Hustle Award. All right, cool. So as you were going around the room, were there things that you saw in someone else's paper and you said, oh man, that's something I should have put or could have put on my paper, or why didn't I think of that? What were some of those things that people saw in other people's papers that you were like, oh, I could have put that down? Yes, ma'am.
Someone put freedom, which I thought was really good.
Oh, cool. Someone put freedom. She thought that was really cool. Saw some other heads nodding. What were some other things? Yes? Pets. All right. So you saw pets and you're like, I could have put my cat. Right? Do you have a cat or a dog?
Dogs.
Dogs. She's like, plural. Yeah, because if you'd have said cats, I would have called you a crazy cat lady. No offense to crazy cat ladies. She's like, All right. What else? One more thing. Sight. Being able to see. All right. Cool. Yeah, that's a cool thing to have on there. I was just listening to NPR today, and they had over in South Minneapolis, there's a manufacturing firm that has the quietest room in the world. It's actually negative decibels. And so they turned the lights out, and they were talking about how disorienting that was, and how your ear, so when you have that level of silence, that you actually hear your hearing. Like he was hearing some clicks, and they're like, "That's your eardrum." And I thought that was weird. That was kind of cool. So I think sight would be an important thing. All right. So as you're also going around the room, were there things that you had difficulties finding someone to sign on? Did folks have one? Yes.
A lot of people had, family, friends, those kind of things. When I think of values, I went off on a whole different direction, and so I had intelligence, integrity, common sense, courtesy.
Okay. So
And she gave me family because I would never have thought of that.
Okay.
And that was the only one that got signatures. But I mean, when I think of values, I think of something just totally different.
Okay. Well, let's take your first one, intelligence, right? Please raise your hand if you value intelligence, even if it was not written on your paper. Intelligence is important. Okay? Cool. Thank you. Another one. Does someone else have one? Yes, ma'am.
Kindness.
Kindness. Please raise your hand if you value kindness, even if it wasn't written on your paper. Okay? Cool. One more.
How about myself?
Yourself, right? Please raise your hand if you value yourself, even though it may not have been written on the paper. That's great. So what do you think what's the moral of this particular activity, or what do you think I was trying to get at in having us do this particular activity?
We all have a lot in common.
We all have a lot in common? Yes, sir?
There's a lot of different things that people value, and most people, it's not that different amongst them.
Yep. That the things that we value are actually not that much different. One of the things that we find is that the differences that we think we see typically are optical illusions, right? That the methods of how people get to those goals are typically the things that trip us up, right? So, for example, women with hijabs, right? Some folks say, well, that's oppressive. Well, I think women in string bikinis is a little bit oppressive, right? And so why do people do what they do? What typically trips us up is the methods that they take to get to their end goal, all right? And so we'll talk about that as well. So I also wanted to share with you, I don't know if anyone has heard the Lady Gaga song, I Was Born This Way. I was born this way. I think one part she's like humping a camel or something, This is crazy stuff that's happening in some of these videos, right? So in response to that, I did some personal reflection, and I realized that I, in fact, was not born black. I was not born black. My parents knew each other in elementary school, in junior high, and in high school. After they graduated, they messed around for a while, and I'm part of the product of that, which is really interesting because the backdrop of my family is that my dad is a Pentecostal preacher, and so he preached no sex before marriage, no sex before marriage. Right? Because that's the word. Woo! And but we have this little family secret that my parents were married in July, and I was born in October. The math didn't quite work out. Right? But one of the things that's really interesting about that is that when my dad put his DNA on the table and my mom put her DNA on the table and they mixed it all together, and at least that's how they told me I got here. Right? So they mixed it all together. I became human. So I'm swimming around, chilling for 9 months, eating as much as I want, just relaxing in the pool. And then all of a sudden, the dreaded day comes. October 30th, 1970. They put my mom up in these mechanical stirrup things. And the doctor's there with his catcher's mitt. And behind the doctor is the lady from the Social Security office. And she has her tablet. And she says, we want to see what he's going to be. We have suspicions that he'll never live old enough to get Social Security, but will still put FICA on all of his checks. Then we had the lady from the public schools, and so she had a clipboard. She was like, oh, he's coming from a poor family, so he's automatically going to Head Start. And then the other lady next to her was from the other office, and she said, we can't wait to see what his racial designation is. Black, white, or other. Right? Because those were all the choices that they had back then. And then lastly, there's a guy who's from the correctional facility. He said, well, I hope he can learn by the age of 3. Otherwise, we'll add an extra bed in the penitentiary. Right? So I had all these people standing around in the background waiting to see what would happen. And so then, at 7:59, boop, I'm here! And they all checked their clipboards and walked away. Before I was black, I was human. And when I was born, there were people waiting to try to determine what my destiny is, to tell me what kind of life I will have, be, and the kind of personality that I should have. And I like to offer to you that the same thing happened to you. That when you were gestating in your mother's womb, you were human. And then society put these things on you to make you white, German, Croatian, Icelandic. Right? So it's the social construct that has created us to be the categories that we are. Now, what's exciting about the social construct making us who we are? What is a social construct? Who makes social constructs? Society. And society is made up of whom? Us. People. It's funny. I was talking with a kid about the Fighting Sioux. Right? And they want to change the name. And he was like, well, I don't think that, we've had that name and there's some pride associated with it. And I'm down, whatever. But what did the Sioux people say? I think you should be able to determine what you want to be called. Black people were Negroes, they were black, and then they were African American, and now I guess we're African American black, but they get to decide who they want to be. Just like we get to decide what kind of world we want to have. Stop buying Coke. What's going to happen to Coke? They won't exist or they'll change. Right? Who bought the new Coke? That stuff was nasty compared to the old Coke. Right? So we can change things. We can make things different. We can make them better. It is in our hands. It's not outside of us. So, I got to get moving. Oh, so I did want to talk about this, though, just for a minute. Because there's this thing that's running rampant in society at large that is talking about the intelligence of groups. And so there's this study that says that intelligence is on this bell curve throughout the planet. And I always find it interesting that the people who do the studies, their group is always on top. Their group is never on the bottom for anything, right? But so they're talking about this intelligence. And they're talking about, in this part of the world they're intelligent in this way. In this part they're not as intelligent and all sorts of stuff. And I started asking myself, intelligence for what? Example, how many people grew up on a farm or around farms or know something about a farm? Please raise your hand. Is there a certain kind of intelligence that one has to have to be on a farm? So what kinds of things do you have to know to be on a farm?
Fix everything.
Had to fix everything, right? Because you just can't go to, AutoZone or whatever to just grab a part or call somebody up. You got to be there to make it happen yourself. What else do you have to know?
Have to take care of animals.
How to take care of animals, right? How to, do all the stuff and pull them out and fix them and, all